Salvete omnes, et bene venistis. Welcome back. In this video, we will be covering Aeneid Book 1, lines 50 through 63. Just a quick reminder before we begin about our color coding. Remember that our words coded in red indicate subjects. Our words coded in green indicate verbs. And any word you see coded in blue indicates an object. And the rest we will deal with as we go. So with that out of the way, let's begin. We pick up at the end of Juno's speech to herself, her soliloquy, with Thalia, which your note tells you is acting substantively from thales, such things or such words. And this is typically the way in Virgil we will end direct speech. All right, so Juno was speaking directly to herself, and so Thalia signifies that the speaking is over and we are returning to the narrative. And then we see Dea, which is no surprise, that's Juno. So Dea volutans, and this is a present active participle, so it is nominative and it is going with Dea, describing it. But as a participle, it is also acting as a verb, and so it is taking Thalia over here as its direct object. Okay, and so the goddess thinking, or literally rolling, thinking such things, all right, or such words, if you like, secum, with herself, or to herself, we might say, in flammato corde, both ablative, even though the endings don't match, in her inflamed or enraged heart. All right, because again, she was speaking with her internal voice. What did the goddess do as she pondered such things? She venit, and the rest of this is literally where she venit to. Okay, she came to. We know that it's to because we see patriam is accusative, so we know that we are going to somewhere. She came to the country of the clouds. All right, the country of the clouds, this genitive plural going with patriam. And then the rest of this is actually standing in apposition to patriam, both loca and Aeoliam. All right, so what we have is essentially she came to one place, but it's described three ways. First, it is described as the land of the clouds. Then it is described as a place. Loca is plural, but we can understand neuter plurals as singular if it works. A place, feta, literally pregnant or teeming, but the idea of pregnancy is very evocative. Pregnant with, these ablatives here, raging winds. Okay, and yes, technically the auster is a specific wind, but since it's being used in the plural, we can understand it to mean all winds. So, the place pregnant with raging winds, Aeolia. All right, this is where she came to. Please note that this is the place, not the king. All right, Aeolus rules Aeolia, which is very convenient, but this is not the man. So don't make that mistake. All right, moving on then. Hic, not hic, this, like this king. Hic, in this place. We know that this I is long because it is followed by two consonants, the C and the V. In this place, King Aeolus, and then we see here with this ablative, all right, in a vast cave. All right, so King Aeolus in his vast cave, ablative of place where. What does King Aeolus do in his vast cave? Well, we have to come all the way down to this line down here to find out what he does. This line, of course, as we see, is what he does it to. So he premit, he presses down, he restrains the luctantis ventos tempestatesque sonoras. So the wailing winds and the echoing storms, or something like that. Luctantes and sonoras can be translated a couple of different ways. But he presses them down or restrains them with or by means of, this ablative of means, by means of his power. And this ak is linking the two verbs here, premit and frenat. He, again, restrains them, or he reins them in, or he holds them in, or again, by means of, chains and a prison, both ablatives of means. All right, chains and a prison. All right, now the winds. Illi. Okay, not only are we plural here now in the nominative, so we know we're not talking about Aeolus anymore, but we remember that when we see the pronoun ille used in some form, it typically denotes a subject change. Okay, so these are the winds. Illi indignantes. The winds, or they, upset, angered, chafing, another present active participle with the nt. What did they do? Well, we can see down here what they did. They fremunt, okay? They murmured or roared. And then we can come back up here to finish this out. Now, this cum, this magno, goes with murmure, and the whole thing is the cum clause, all right? With a great rumbling of, you might say from for this genitive, right? Montis, genitive, of or from the mountain. All right. So the winds, chafing, with a great rumbling of the mountain, murmur or roar, circum claustra. This is an accusative, but in the prepositional phrase. They murmur or roar all around their prison, literally their closed up place. All right, so we can say prison. All right, that's what the winds are doing. Moving on now, we see that we've subject shifted again. Now Aeolus is back. And we see a similar setup to before when he was in the vasto antro. Here he is in a celsa arche, a lofty citadel or fortified place. Right? That's what an arx is. It's a citadel. So in or on his lofty citadel, Aeolus sits. Aeolus sedet. Aeolus sits. Tenens, another present active participle, obviously with Aeolus, holding his scepter. This is the object of tenens. And, still Aeolus, he softens or soothes their, now this animos and eros is referring back to the Illi indignantes, the winds, okay? Soothes their souls and softens or lessens their wrath. And this is, of course, talking about the winds. Moving on. So, ni faciat. Now, ni is short for ni si. So we are in a conditional clause here, and the note tells you that this conditional clause, despite the fact that this verb is in the present subjunctive, your note suggests that we should read this as a present contrary to fact conditional, which usually wants the imperfect subjunctive, ni faceret. But instead here, Virgil has used ni faciat. Not the usual way, so the note helps you there. If he, still Aeolus, did not do this, all right, that is to say, restrain the winds and keep them in prison, what would happen? Well, we see now a whole series of objects, Maria ac terras calunque profundum, quippe ferrant rapidi. So here's our subject again, and we can see that we have gone back to the plural, so we know it's the winds. They, the winds, rapidi, so flashing, all right, swift, whirling, would surely, that's what quippe means here, would surely carry off, right, ferrant, and notice the present subjunctive because we are still in that conditional, they would carry off these three things. The sea, again a plural, but we can read it singular, and the land, plural, but we read it singular, and the deep sky. All right, three things. The winds whirling would surely carry off the sea and the land and the deep sky secum with them, and they would sweep these three things, all right, the sea, the land, and the sky, through the airs. All right, so that's what is happening right there. Said Pater Omnipotens. Now, who is the Pater Omnipotens? That, of course, is only Jupiter. All right, Jupiter. So, the Almighty Father buried or hid away, and we understand the winds are the object of this, even though these objects down here have nothing to do with abdidit. He buried them in, we see the ablatives here, in black caves, or dark caves. Hoc metuens, another present active participle going with the pater omnipotens, fearing this. And the this, neuter singular, the this that we are referring to is, of course, the winds potentially carrying off everything if they were let loose. The Father feared this, and so he buried them in deep black caves. And, okay, now this que here, be careful, this que is linking this verb, abdidit, with this verb, impulsuit. So he buried them in the caves and placed upon them, right, impulsuit, he put upon them a mass and tall mountains. And this in super is an adverb, so he placed these things on top of them. Makes sense? And, all right, this que is linking impulsuit with dedit, very simple. He gave them a king. This would be Aeolus regem. He gave them a king, qui. Now this qui is, of course, referring to the regem. It's the closest masculine thing. Who, and then we have to come all the way down. You see there's a lot happening down here. First we come to skiret. All right, this is our main verb. Who knows, or knew, because we can actually read this as present because this verb here, dedit, is in the perfect tense, which means, according to strict rules of Latin, if we want to express an action happening at the same time, we have to use the imperfect tense because we're relating something that has already happened. All right? If you want to know more about this, you can look up something called the sequence of tenses. But for right now, even though this is in the imperfect subjunctive, skiret, we are going to translate it as if it were present. Who knows? And then the note tells you that this use of skiret with these infinitives, premere and dare, means, in Latin, it means something like who knows how to. Okay? So, this is a king who knows how to both press or repress and give, and then for this dare, we have to understand the laxas habenas. And this is similar to earlier when the Trojans were dabant vela, they were setting the sails or unfurling the sails. This is a similar kind of expression. Literally, this means to give loose reins. Laxas, loose. Habenas are reins, like you would use to guide a horse. So, to the effect of dare laxas habenas is something like to release the reins, right? To let go of the reins, thereby letting the winds loose. So this is a king who knows how both to repress the winds, but also to let the reins out, to let the reins loose. Iusus, going with qui. Perfect passive participle, meaning something like when he is ordered to. Okay, the idea here is that Aeolus answers to Jupiter. And then the thing that we have skipped over is foide recerto, an ablative meaning something like with a clear, kerato of course means certain, but a clear pact or treaty or understanding. Okay, so this is a king who, with a clear treaty or pact, knows how both to repress the winds and to let the reins loose when he is commanded. And that is the end of this video. Line 63 is where we are. In the next video, we will pick up as Juno arrives and speaks with Aeolus. Walete.